Donald Trump is gearing up for his return to the White House, and Canada is battening down the hatches. Trump has made several big promises that could spell trouble for Canada, including a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the United States. The new Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement is up for review and possible renegotiation in 2026. Plus, Trump has also threatened to pull U.S. protection from NATO allies that don't meet the 2% spending target. And then there's the mass deportation pledge that could send desperate migrants north to Canada. There's a lot to talk about there with the Power Panel. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative cabinet minister. Brad Levine is a former national campaign director for the NDP. And here's me in the studio. Vandana Cotter is a former advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And Rob Russo is the former CBC Parliamentary Bureau Chief, now the Canada correspondent for The Economist. It's good to see you all again. We haven't talked since the U.S. election because they vote on Tuesdays. Lisa, let's start with you on this. There's a lot of big things on the table for Donald Trump to do, and he has an extraordinary mandate to do it. If you look at the House, the Senate, the Judiciary, the White House, the appointments today show the immigration focus is going to be a big one early. What are your thoughts on what could be ahead?
Oh, I think absolutely on the immigration side, because that's the one that came through loud and clear that Americans wanted to have a change. So he's going to put the people in the places. That's the interesting part about right now, because you're hearing a lot of supposition as to who's going to get what position, and little by little they're trickling it out. So you'll have a flavor by the time we get to January of who's going to be going through their confirmation hearings. And obviously, because everything is controlled by the Republicans, the confirmations won't be as fraught as they normally are in terms of who gets to take which position. But they've got a lot of positions to fill, and they're clearly prioritizing the ones that they view as their priority.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brad, if he tries to put RFK Jr. and Elon Musk in there, there might be some pushback, I don't know, from the more moderate Republicans. But on this border one, Tom Homan going in there, Stephen Miller coming in as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. He is a hardliner on the immigration side. I mean, the clip we played earlier from Tom Homan saying, pack your bags, you're going home. How does Canada prepare for the possible disruption if they are this aggressive on undocumented migrants in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, he's even said that this is going to be the largest deportation in history. And so I think that, Canada, both at the federal government as well as at the provincial level, I think we should be taking those signals very, very seriously and beginning immediate plans. You know, it's interesting what it's going to mean for the conversation up here. I think that it would be fair to say that, increasingly in this country, we've already begun the conversation about what increased newcomers to Canada has meant for not only for housing but for healthcare. And I think that this kind of years-long consensus that immigration is a net positive for Canada. I think people are ultimately proud of our immigration system. But I'm sensing that there's been some fraying at the edges here in terms of the policies over the last number of years of the federal government. In terms, I don't think it's a racist-based kind of questioning. More of a can our infrastructure withstand the intake at this level, at this pace? Now, if we add to this many migrants coming to our border coming in from the U.S., what that will do to the conversation. We're going to have an election in Ontario. We're going to have a federal election. But I'm also looking at the conversation that's going to be national, that's going to stem from the conversations already taking place in the province of Quebec. You've got a PQ that is very high in the polls right now, who are getting very muscular in their dogma surrounding immigration and migration because of Roxham Road. And what is Legault's response going to be, and how will that impact on Trudeau and Poilievre Singh in the conversation as to what our response should be? There's going to be a lot of, I think, moving parts when it comes to Canada's response and what the conversation will look like up here.
Vandana, when you look at the way migrants were singled out in the campaign, particularly Haitians working in Springfield under temporary protected status, who knows what's going to happen there? But Trump threatened to revoke that before, and that's what led to a lot of people going to Roxham Road. This is obviously on a much more industrialized scale this time around. I mean, how do you, as the Canadian government, start preparing for what could happen here?
I think they already have, and I actually think what Mark Miller's announcement recently why it took place at that time is because I think they expected this after an election if the Republicans came in, which happened. I think it's been clear that they've been saying our economy just needs to be able to grow in a way that can support the newcomers. So everything has gone down. I think they've sent a clear signal that not that Canada's not open for immigration, but it's going to be harder to get in. I think that message has been received, and they'll probably repeat it over and over again, and people are going to hear it as they apply for a family vacation or parents and grandparents. There was also a recent change in the 10-year visitor visas. So I think they're already preparing for that. I'm sure there's conversations happening at the border already. Knowing what happened last time, the one thing with experience is that they can figure out how to fortify it now.
Rob, I'm having kind of flashbacks because I arrived here in 2016 as a reporter when you were the bureau chief, and Trump got elected, and it changed so much of the focus, the unpredictability, the uncertainty, and just the volatility of everything. And it feels like when you look at the mandate he's coming back with the people around him, and with these priorities, we're back there, but at an even more urgent level.
Yes, and he has a more robust mandate, as Jerry Butts was saying earlier. Look, there is a bit of good news, I think, in Robert Lighthizer appointment. If you read his book from last year, he has some tough things to say about Canada and the way it negotiated the CUSMA. But he has some very nice things to say about Chrystia Freeland. Talks about her as a future prime minister, somebody that he could, who was tough, but somebody he could deal with. So the familiarity with Robert Lighthizer, I think, is a good thing. I don't know that trade is going to be our immediate problem. We'll see. I think actually the immediate problem rather than immigration, because if you listen to Homan, what did he say? He said, first we're going to go after people who have broken laws and pose a security risk. So there's not going to be an instant deportation. They're going to do this clearly in phases, and it's going to take some time.
But the signal to a scared community is a thing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But if they do this in phases, we shouldn't have the waves that some were predicting. I think the immediate problem is going to be on contribution to NATO. I think that's where Trump has had a burn in his bonnet for a long, long time. I think he went out of his way to try to humiliate the Prime Minister when they had a discussion about this during the Q&A while photographers were taking pictures. I think that's an area where he's going to be pointed, and he's going to ask us to accelerate beyond the 8-year commitment to 2%.
Yeah, there's some mystery about Robert Lighthizer. The Financial Times said he's going to be the trade representative. Politico put out a report saying that's complete BS. He's apparently on the short list to be Commerce or Treasury Secretary. So his exact role, but he is coming back. Yeah. It's what it sounds like, right?
And he knows Canada. Yeah. Dines with Chrystia Freeland, an admirer of hers. So I think that's probably as good as the kind of news as we could have in this situation.
Yeah, right? but it again reminds you of Trump 1. It's like you hear one thing, it's reported, then it's contradicted, and then it goes back. So here we are.
And it's the same with Ivanka coming back. Right? There was some suggestion that they were not going to come back. Yeah. The fact that they are coming back, again, that isn't necessarily bad news. She got on quite well with the Prime Minister. They got to see a play together, Come From Away.
I think Come From Away has ended its run, though. So, Lisa, they're going to have to find something else to go to. Maybe Wicked. I don't know. But Lisa, the economic consequences here, there's still no real clarity on how the tariffs would apply to Canada or Mexico as the continental trading partners. It seems pretty clear. Donald Trump may want to use the review process to do something more than just review it. How would you advise that Canada approaches him with these circumstances? It seems like a value-driven argument as opposed to values-driven would be the path. How would you do it?
I would say expect the unexpected, but I also offer this. Think about it from the perspective from the United States. There's a lot of people in the United States who don't believe that they've actually gotten a fair deal from globalization, who don't think that fair trade or free trade is something that they want to have, and that they're okay with tariffs. And the argument Canada uses every single time is tariffs are going to hurt your people more than they're going to hurt our people. But maybe they're willing to take that risk. Maybe they're okay with collecting money at the border if that is going to cause people to not choose that product coming across and instead look for something that's made domestically, which may be more expensive. I mean, after all, a carbon tax or a tariff, they're both ways of changing someone's behavior. And as a result, they may actually be not in the wrong. They may actually have something there in terms of what I'm not at all endorsing a protectionist society. Canada absolutely needs to have this kind of trade, but you got to put yourself in the shoes of the other party and understand where they're coming from. And this Trump administration is not afraid to break things. And if they're going to break this notion that tariffs are bad, then they're going to apply tariffs across the board. And Canada's going to have to make sure that they have an argument other than it's hurting your people more than it's hurting my people. I think the argument is what Rob already says, which is you really need us for security, and we are here to help you in that.
Right, but doesn't the economic harm you're doing to your own people come into play when you look at the auto sector in some of those key, Rust Belt states? There's a bunch of new Congress people and senators who, benefit from the cross-border stuff. They've got to get to them, don't they, and get them on board to try to have them convince the people in the White House don't do this?
Yeah, but I'd put softwood lumber to you in terms of whether or not a tariff hurts. I mean, the United States has collected $10 billion in softwood lumber tariffs, and it's the producers who don't mind necessarily it happening. As a result, we get to see this coming back like a zombie. Every 10 years or so, we get a deal, then it comes back after the deal expires. So clearly, tariffs are working for them when it comes to this notion. Why wouldn't it work for other sectors? Doesn't mean it has to be held in every sector. But it may be applied in every sector until they figure out whether or not they can supply something domestically on their own.
But Brad, you look at some of the analysis done by Trevor Toome, the University of Calgary economist, and others. If these tariffs come in, that's a half a point or more off the GDP. Canada probably goes into recession because of that. And if you retaliate, it compounds the misery. So this has to be job number one in terms of getting clarity and directional change, maybe.
No question. And it'll be interesting to see what ultimately, if there is a Team Canada approach, if the political environment today will warrant or help foster a Team Canada, multi-partisan, multi-industry approach. We'll see if that's the case. A couple of things on when it comes to the tariffs and what it may mean for Canada. So he has said no carve-outs for anybody, which may or may not be insurmountable. But we take a look at what the ultimate objectives are for the tariffs. That is, he wants to onshore those manufacturing jobs that have gone offshore during all of this globalization over the last couple of decades. So when we take a look at things that could be helpful, so oil and gas, Canada exports a tremendous amount. We would want to see that sector obviously not under those tariffs. Trump has promised lower energy prices. Can we make the case that by doing that and harming Canada's oil and gas sector, can he ultimately fulfill that obligation to reduce those? Second element, I think, is critical minerals. So here we have the tariffs predominantly are targeted towards places like China. And we obviously saw the role that Elon Musk played. One of the biggest threats to Tesla was, of course, lower priced Chinese electrical vehicles. Trump has also promised he's going to get rid of the subsidies for purchasing EVs. Who is that ultimately going to help? It's going to help Musk because he's a market leader there. But we've just spent billions of dollars creating an infrastructure with the United States on electrical vehicle for battery manufacturing. We have our minerals that only other places like China have. So we're going to be we're going to have to share with him, his people, as well as the governors, how instrumental we are to producing American jobs, not only Canadian jobs.
Okay, we've got about less than 2 minutes left, but Vandana, if we somehow align tariffs with the United States, that creates problems with CETA, with Europe, and with CPTPP, with the Asian partners. And on the Chinese vehicles, it's Chinese-made vehicles. Tesla's made in China in a big way. Musk is going to want to get out from underneath the tariffs that the Biden administration has put in, which does affect Tesla's made over there.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, just to touch on like Lisa's point, to go into the American psyche, I think you need those proof points. So I think what we did last time is that I worked for NAFTA Baines. I was told certain states, certain industries, make sure you build those relationships so they can also lobby on your behalf. I say the same thing. So whatever is going to hurt jobs in that state, make sure you're building those relationships, talking to those industries, and advocating for your perspective. So I think that's going to be a Team Canada approach. And I think that's how, but I also think that, they're not afraid to retaliate. And I think Chrystia Freeland flexed that muscle last time. Going back to Chinese EVs, who knows what can happen, but if someone's going to put tariffs on our products, I think they'll do the same thing. And I don't think they'll be scared to do that.
No, Rob, I've read some reporting in the New York Times, talked to Ambassador Hillman about this in Washington. They seem to have a list of retaliatory tariffs should it come to that.
$600 billion in exports from the United States come to Canada. We're their #1 export destination. We're not their #1 trading partner anymore. That's now Mexico. But their #1 destination for exports remains Canada. So at a state level, at a local level, you can move a lot of muscle by letting people and reminding people of that fact. They will hurt themselves. They hurt their own homegrown industries that they want to grow by putting tariffs on that kind of a number.
I think they might be building a list of all the industries in Ohio for some reason that just might be affected by all of this. That might get the attention of someone pretty high up in the administration who's a new face that they got to learn how to deal with. I want to thank you all. We're out of time. We're only 1 hour today. Rob Russo, Vandana Cotter, Brad Levine, Lisa Raitt, thank you so much.